We're bringing in our next guest, Robert Smith. And, Robert, you're the perfect guy to ask this question to because you played very, very competitive high school football in a city at Euclid where, you know, it's like a religion. Then you went to Ohio State. You obviously had a terrific career in the NFL. Does anything come close, in your opinion, to running out of that tunnel at the shoe, looking up and seeing 100,000 people you don't know but could probably be your best friend?
Well, first of all, Jay, how do you do this to me? Welcome back, by the way. You haven't been around for the last couple. Welcome back. But how do you make me follow the Barry White of broadcasting?
Exactly.
Just smooth as silk with that voice.
It's
but
incredible.
You know what's interesting, Jay? First of all, let me back up to high school here. By the way, I just saw this on Twitter, on the Twitter machine. I think that what is it? The Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Yeah.
You're gonna check this out because it's my senior picture and it's
saw
hilarious.
Wow.
Oh my God. So this is it's the anniversary of the first nationally televised high school game, which was Us and the Nation. Yeah. So, you know, you're absolutely right about Ohio State. There's nothing like it. And I remember the first time that I went to the shoe when I was in high school. And you have to, like, I didn't grow up a huge football fan. Like, I didn't, in the sense that I was sitting there watching it constantly. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really get into Ohio State games until I started getting recruited. And so I went to my first game, I think it was my junior year. And I remember I was there with track coach from Ohio State, Bob Ramlow, and his wife. And, like, we're watching this spectacle of the band, and I had never seen that before. I had never, like, it wasn't something that I grew up because I wasn't a fan. Like, not that I wasn't a fan, but I wasn't an avid fan. Like, I had never seen bands perform like that. But to experience that for the first time as
there it is. Wow. What a stud. What a stud.
Hey, you can barely see it, but I got that little Russell Wilson little pencil thin mustache up there too. And by the way, so that wasn't my idea. So I got my senior pictures for free, and the guy wanted to advertise, so he had me wear the jersey. But I wasn't deciding to wear that jersey and have the football, although I did decide to have that sexy mustache.
That's one of the greatest senior pictures of all time, as far as I'm concerned.
That's a little Shamar Moore and I'll be sure in that.
Hey, we all wish we could have senior pictures as cool as that one.
You're stupid.
That's a great call. That's a great call.
Hey, I met Albie out in Las Vegas too, by the way.
Shout out to your twin.
But Jay, you're right, man. Like the very first game day, walking out at Ohio State, and you know we didn't have. I wasn't there in the spring. You know they didn't do that then, having the early enrollees, but we had like a little scrimmage, and you know in the middle of August, and there were I don't know probably 50 or 60,000 people there. But on game day, with just everything that's happening, from the moment you wake up in the morning and you leave that hotel and you're driving through campus and you're driving by, you know, fraternity and sororities and, you know, everybody's out front and, you know, raising their early drinks on that morning. And then you get to the stadium and there's all the tailgating and everybody's out in the parking lot and everybody's lining the entrance as you're walking in. Like that whole buildup. I mean, it's almost indescribable, and I wish that everybody that was a fan of football could experience what it's like to walk out on any kind of game day. Yeah. But Ohio State game day is just different, man. And really all that build-up, and then you're sitting in the locker room, you're getting ready to go out when everybody's there. And even with all that preparation, just nothing can prepare you for what it's actually like to be stepping onto that field for the first time when you're getting ready to play a game when you're 18 years old. I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible.
Hey, Robert, so, when I came back to Ohio State, I came from Wisconsin back, right? And so I went to Wisconsin football games on Saturday. And their atmosphere, I thought was
Camp
great.
Randall's nuts.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But it don't compare to Columbus. It does not. Robert, talk to the folks that are watching about this. the pressure of being an Ohio State football player, especially when you're supposed to come in here with all the bag, right? You're supposed to be the high-line player.
Yeah.
The pressure that's put on these players down here to perform. Talk about that.
You know, and again, if you haven't been through something like that, it's hard to describe. And you know, now I think in some ways it's more difficult for players, but in some ways it's easier. It's more difficult in the sense that you've got even more attention and it happens longer. But because it's just everywhere and people are on social media and they're hearing the criticism and they're hearing, you know, the hopes and the expectations for the fan bases, they kind of can acclimate themselves to what it's going to be like to have that kind of pressure. But back then, you know, I remember being on campus and for visits and just kind of hearing people yell out, and you know, it was kind of surprising, but at the same time, it happens kind of gradually, you know, because when you're in high school, you know, you start to get some notoriety, and so there's an article here, or there's, you know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then of course, when I was a senior in high school, us being the first team that had, you know, that level of national attention, the first nationally televised game, we had kind of built ourselves up into it. But as far as the pressure and the expectations, like, you feel more of that yourself. You just kind of put pressure on yourself. And, you know, I think different athletes deal with it in different ways. But to me, it was always just motivation. Like, nobody is going to expect more out of me than me. So anything that I hear on the outside can't possibly be a detriment.
Robert, C.J. Stroud, speaking of pressure, it's always a lot of pressure being the quarterback for the Buckeyes. Heisman Trophy consideration expected. When you look at his game from last year, obviously he was great, but everybody has things they can improve in, no matter how good you are. When you look at his game, what's the part of his game you kind of got your eye on that you think, okay, he can get better doing this? Is there anything specific?
Well, any young quarterback, you want to speed up their processing. And processing really doesn't get sped up until they just have the reps. And it's really like any position, but it's more pronounced at the quarterback position. You just have to see certain coverages and certain rotations, certain blitzes a number of times, and you get more and more comfortable in the pocket, how you move, how you step up, how you slide, how you escape, which direction you go, how you keep your eyes downfield. But then the anticipation, things like that. I think that's something that you're going to see him do much better this year. The anticipation of not just what to expect pre-snap, because defensive coordinators, they're trying to do what they can to slow that process down. They want to slow down the processing of the quarterback, and that's giving a different look post-snap than pre-snap. But there are only so many ways to do it. And based on what they see in their progression, or if it's a defensive key read, whatever it is at the quarterback position, you want to see that anticipation. You can't wait for that window to be open. You have to anticipate that window opening and throw it there oftentimes before it's actually wide open. So I think that's something that you'll see out of his game this year at a more pronounced level.
Robert, this is a kind of philosophical question. If you had to say what Ohio State is known for most, would it be defensive backs, receivers, or running backs?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's right now I have to say receivers. I mean, you look at Olave and Wilson and Williams getting drafted, and those guys were drafted consecutively, right? And I count him as an Ohio State receiver, even though he was at Alabama. To have that, and then to look at the roster now, we talked about this last week, and to look at the wide receiver core now and say, wait a second, the best guy might be here in Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's just insane, what they've been able to do, and I'm just amazed at the depth, and going back, a number of years. I mean, it's been like this, and Brian Hartline has just done such an incredible job, I think, of just taking it to a level that we just haven't seen. So right now, I think it's definitely going to be the wide receivers that people are going to think about most. And, maybe, defensive backs, it's always going to be a little bit more difficult just because you're on the defensive side. Because even when you're playing well, unless you're doing something crazy like a Diggs down here in Dallas, unless you're intercepting a huge number of balls, people may not know you the same way. But I think what we've seen with this receiving core the last few years, I mean, it has to be wide receiver you.
Yeah, well, they've really put out great players at all three when you think about it. Robert, before we let you go, it's really difficult to handicap these matches between powers in week one because we think we know, but oftentimes we're wrong. We don't. 17.5 is a lot to give. Does this Buckeye team cover tomorrow?
I think that they do, and what's interesting about this matchup. This is the second straight matchup against an OSU for Notre Dame, but not the OSU, of course. But playing a ball game against Jim Knowles, and they did a pretty good job of moving the ball in that second half. Jim Knowles wasn't there as a defensive coordinator anymore. Right. He had already moved on to Columbus.
Still his defense.
Yeah, it's still his defense. And, they did a nice job of adjusting, which I'm sure Jim Knowles would have done if he was there as well in that second half. And, they played much better defensively. And I think Ohio State defensively, picking up the scheme is one thing. And I think some of the finer nuances are probably going to take some time. But I think athletically what Ohio State has defensively, they're going to match up much better, especially in what gave Notre Dame troubles in that second half in tighter man coverage. Now, obviously, a different quarterback, more mobile, so there are some challenges there. But I think athletically, defensively, Ohio State has a much better chance, and I expect much more out of them defensively against this Notre Dame team than what Oklahoma State was able to muster in that bowl game. And defensively, this Notre Dame team gave up 600 yards in that bowl game. And obviously Marcus Freeman's now the head coach of the team and got some continuity in the staffs and the way that defense is going to play and some of those guys back. But this is a much different roster than they had to face against Oklahoma State. And I don't see them, unless there's something crazy, which can always happen with turnovers or huge special teams plays, and one missed tackle can be instant 6. If this game plays out the way I expect it to, with Ohio State running the ball, with Ohio State being able to throw the ball to multiple targets, I just don't see Notre Dame staying within 17.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Robert, last thing, Travion Henderson, how good is he? Like, is he going to be the next great running back in the NFL eventually? And how's the depth looking behind him?
Yeah, and I think that, definitely he's just one of those guys that just jumps off the screen. And I love seeing it, whether it was Zeke back in the day or J.K. Dobbins and, now Travion. They're just guys that look different, man. They're guys that look different the first time that you see him run the ball and that burst. And that lateral movement and the power and the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. And I think, like any position, getting the reps and seeing more things, players just get better and better. And, for me, watching him, I think he's definitely going to be a great NFL back. But, let's just worry about how he's going to play against Notre Dame and staying healthy right now. But, I really like Mayan behind him. They got some young cats that, can tote that rock too. So, obviously the offensive side of the ball has been stacked and, defensively, hopefully we'll see some of the same level of recruiting, especially in that front seven on the defensive side. But on that offensive side, man, they're just so stacked. It's crazy.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see that defense sort of catch up to the offense in talent, but it's tough. You got so many scholarships, and there are a lot of other teams going after all that talent. Robert, enjoy the game tomorrow. How are you watching tomorrow? What are you doing?
Well, I have I'll be watching some of it with the kids, but I love watching the games from home just because of what you get with the DVR.
Right.
When I'm walking, I'll walk around with the iPad sometimes, but
right.
We'll have some good food. We'll have our tailgate in the house here.
Very nice.
And we'll watch the game, but I'm looking forward to it. It's just amazing, these kind of environments, especially when you get night games and build up throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah. OH, brother.
I-O, boy.
I-O.
There you
it
go.
is.
Robert Smith, the legendary Robert Smith on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Enjoy the game tomorrow, Robert. We'll be talking real soon.
All right, sounds good.